Today, I will talk a little bit about my project that I have held in terms of my PhD studies, which was funded by the university funds and also by the National Science Center in terms of Preludium grant. And this will be only a subsample of my research project, which includes parents and also children's responses. Mainly from coming from Turkey. In general, my research project concerns migrant children in Poland, and one of the most important requirements for characteristics and for the recruitment process was that migrant children who came to Poland should have never been in Poland before. They had zero level of Polish language or culture. They do not have relatives in Poland, and they just experienced the transition from one school to another school, from one community to another community, from one country to another country. And the respondents of parents were just their parents. I didn't search for certain adult respondents, but they were just the parents of my children's respondents. And as it was for me not that hard to reach for the respondents, as today we were talking a little bit about the recruitment procedure, because I was working with some of the migrant children at the international school in Warsaw, and that I had a lot of people who knew other immigrant families, and so it was like a snowballing effect, passing the information and reaching other families. The reaching participants, as I mentioned, was quite easy at the beginning, but when I started my project, it was at the early March this year. In early March, I held only 2 interviews with one child and one parent, and then I had to change my methodology because of the quarantine and the school closure. And all the rest of the interviews were held online. For having the interviews online, I had to take another consent from the ethics committee explaining why I'm changing and how I'm changing my research methods. And I also had to withdraw from some of the methods like drawings and photo elicitation, which I was initially planning as a part of child-centered methodology. So only semi-structured interviews with children, parents, and teachers were left. All of that were recorded via Zoom application. If we're talking about Turkish migrants in Poland, I would like to mention that the number of Turkish migrants is constantly growing. And if you would note, in 2010, there were a little bit more than 1,000 officially legal immigrants from Turkey in Poland. Then in 2016, it doubled. Why 2016? Because of the purge and political crisis in Turkey. And in January 2020, there were almost 5,000 official legal immigrants from Turkey. But I would like to mention that most of my respondent families, I'd say it was about 70%, they didn't have legal status here because they were in a waiting position. They just waited for giving them either refugee status or asylum seekers or political refugees, as most of them stated. Many of them arrived to Poland because of having some German or Italian visa or any other Schengen visa. So that was their mean of coming to Poland, and thus they stay here for quite a while. As I mentioned, ethical approval, it was quite important in my research, especially it concerns migrants and children and also adults, because if we're talking today about the crisis, it's not about only about COVID crisis, it's not about migration crisis, but in my case, it's also political crisis, it's a family crisis, emotional crisis that all these families had to come through, and they are still coming through some family crises because they have lost their contacts with the families, as I will show in a while. Also important element of the qualitative research is getting the consent and assent, which I prepared in a few languages. It was in primary in Polish, English, Ukrainian, Russian, and also Turkish, for the respondents to better understand the aim and the procedure of the interviews and of the whole research project. During the interviews with Turkish migrants, I unfortunately do not speak fluent Turkish. That's why I asked the interpreter for helping me. It was quite challenging because I had to have the online interviewing with the interpreter. I couldn't have the simultaneous interpreter at that time, and that's why the interviews were a little bit longer than I supposed it before I started my project. The role of interpreter is extremely important because it's also as the researcher's position. I would say first about my position. In some points, I was considered to be the insider because I was working with a lot of migrant children, and I knew some of my respondents before, and although I didn't know the rest of the respondents, like 60% of my respondents I didn't know before, all of them, they agreed to talk to me only because they knew someone who knew me, and most of them told me if that was someone else, we wouldn't agree to talk, especially in that political crisis time. The role of interpreter here is a key because the lady that are helping me had to be quite professional. At the beginning of my research project, I asked some of my Turkish friends to help me with the translation, and I thought that that would work, but it didn't. Really, if someone is going to do any interview with the interpreter, I would advise at the very beginning just to hire the professional translator for that. Recording and saving data is also very big issue, and I had to ensure all my respondents that the data is confidential and our talk is anonymous, because as I mentioned, it was easy to reach them, but then I had a lot of difficulties in conducting the research and also in analyzing the research, and right now in disseminating the research, because I present their case, like the migrants' case, those families' case. And I know that many of them do read my works and do search for their cases in my works. The other issues that might be mentioned in the research with vulnerable groups like migrant and children is avoiding and minimizing the discomfort. That was the one of the issues that I had to struggle in getting my ethical approval, because the ethical committee was all the time asking me, what are you going to do if the discomfort appears? And conducting the online research, that made me difficult. So I had to be very tactic and very careful not to create a discomfort, because I was not physically to minimize that, or to avoid or to just delete this discomfort, even to just simply give a tissue to the person who was crying. And there were some interviews where both of us and even the interpreter were crying while listening to the stories. About some sensitive issues appeared in the interviews. And the last issue about the research methodology, the research with Muslim people. In my case, there were Turkish people. I think that thanks to internet interviewing, some of the fathers of children, some men, agreed to talk to me, because normally, according to the non-written rules of Muslim religion, men cannot stay with a foreign woman just talking about anything. There should be other people involved in that process. So I think that internet interviewing just helped me a lot and helped me to involve fathers, not only mothers, in that process. In my presentation, I will show you the political crisis and migration crisis of those families from Turkey. And for the analysis, I used the intergenerational solidarity theory
Anzhela, you have
developed by
just 5 minutes left, so you need to speed up.
Okay, thank you, Bengtson and Robert, which includes associational solidarity, affectual, consensual, functional, normative, and structural solidarity, which also Bengtson and Oyama also developed some effects in the crisis situations, like cohort effect, lineage, and period were very important in my analysis. Cohort effect means the trends and orientation in the times when family members were born and grow up. Lineage is a socialization and a negotiation within the family norms, which are quite different for my respondents, like in Turkey and in Poland. And period effects, that's historical and socio-political events that are happening right now, like the purge in Turkey, and also all the migration situation in Europe. And I found out that there were a few crisis moments in those families in the respondents for issues, and they were divided into 4 levels: micro, meso, and exo, and macro. And today I will talk mostly about the exo, which means political and economical situation and immigration policy in Poland, in Europe, and also in Turkey. And exo level includes here political crisis, migration crisis, and also pandemic crisis, which was key also in the research. And as a result of political crisis and migration crisis that families have survived and came through, plus COVID crisis, ended up in a family crisis, because first, because of the political crisis, a lot of families lost their contacts with their families. Most of the respondents who came here for political reasons said that they lost most of the contact with their families, especially with their siblings. Some of them still keep contacts with their parents, and although they didn't break the relations really, but most of them didn't say they are leaving. Some of the respondents said that their relatives still think that they are still in Turkey. They were afraid that their relatives will be persecuted, as well as as most of my respondents were persecuted, and some even had to stay in a jail for quite a while until they run away from Turkey because of the political situation. The weekend contact, definitely, because Turkish migrants said that they are afraid to contact their relatives, and they have zero contact with their friends in Turkey because they're afraid that they will spot, that the politicians and the government will spot them in Poland and will spot their connections in Turkey, and also will get some problems to that and some migration burdens. And because of the migration policies in the whole Europe and also in Poland, most of the respondents had to run quickly within the 2 weeks, as they said, up to 1 month. They had to decide to leave their country, and some of them went, for example, to Macedonia, where they didn't have to have visa and stay there applying for Polish or German visa. Some of them had some visas like Italian or German and then went to those countries and then came to Poland. Some of them went to Ukraine waiting for the documents, still applying to get a visa to another countries like the USA or the UK, but they didn't get. That's why they had to choose Poland. But finally, they enjoyed staying here. And according to pandemic, brought another crisis in the family disintegration, because as one of my respondents said that his family lives in a small village and all the relatives were sick and they got coronavirus, and even his grandmother died. At this moment, he was away and he couldn't even support his family because 80% of my respondents, there were 13 respondents, 12 respondents, 13 children, they do not have a possibility to go back to Turkey. at this moment, and at this moment they couldn't have to provide any support because of some travel restrictions. They could not see their relatives and could not host them in Poland because those people have to stay on a quarantine before 14 days quarantine. Right now 10 days quarantine in Poland. There's no place to host them and wait here, and then going back to Turkey, they have to stay again 14 days quarantine. And also because of the residence status, as I said at the very beginning, they cannot move. Some of the respondents have their relatives in Germany, for example, but still they cannot visit them because of the residence status and travel restrictions. I think I'm running out of time.
Yeah, you have final minute.
Yeah, the last, I would say that in this crisis time, to provide the care, migrant families rely just solely on different polymedia. And all of my respondents said that they do not have major problems with the high-speed internet connection or any technical means, any technical devices, so they can contact, but that contact unfortunately is not that often and that productive as they wanted it to be. Thank you.
Bardzo dziękujemy. Rozumiem, że możemy wrócić do języka polskiego. Nie widzę pytań na czacie. Jest szansa, jeśli ktoś chce się zgłosić, a jeśli nie, to ja mam krótkie pytanie. Tak naprawdę prośbę o pewne wyjaśnienie, ponieważ zaczęła Pani prezentację od takiego bardzo silnej koncentracji na dzieciach migranckich. Natomiast potem pojawił się taki slajd, który był dla mnie bardzo inspirujący, ten, który dotyczył, tam było to rozróżnienie na cohort, lineage i period. I dalej to, co Pani prezentowała, dotyczyło relacji międzygeneracyjnych, ale zupełnie nie odnoszących się do dzieci. Znaczy tak naprawdę było tam bardzo mało tych aspektów związanych z dziećmi. W związku z tym pytanie jest takie, czy to na potrzeby tej dzisiejszej prezentacji Pani się skupiła na tych różnego typu kryzysach? No właśnie, z czego wynika ta pewna konfuzja, moja, przyznaję.
Dziękuję Panie Profesorze. Tak, w rezultacie analizy wyników badania powstało 2 prace, 2 artykuły naukowe i jeden to akurat analiza międzypokoleniowych relacji dzieci i ich dziadków, a kolejna była akurat relacje dzieci i rodziców. I właśnie dzisiaj zaprezentowałam tą dzieci i rodziców.
Dobrze, a jeśli chodzi o sytuację dzieci, to czy byłaby Pani w stanie na podstawie swoich badań wskazać, jakie są takie punkty węzłowe, czy takie kluczowe punkty kryzysowe, które się pojawiają, czy mogą się pojawiać?
Jeżeli chodzi o dzieci?
Tak, jeśli chodzi o dzieci. Nie, jeśli chodzi o dzieci, tak.
Jeżeli chodzi o dzieci, to bym zauważyła, że w tym momencie w rodzinach migranckich nałożyły się właśnie te różne kryzysy. Kryzys polityczny, kryzys migracyjny, kryzys niepewności, kryzys tutaj jeszcze pandemiczny, plus to wszystko się wylało w kryzys emocjonalny tych rodzin, kryzys rodzinny, brak wsparcia. Nie mogą migranci tureccy w tej chwili, którzy znajdują się w Polsce, nie mogą wesprzeć swoje rodziny, swoich rodziców w Turcji i ich rodziny też pozostają tam na przykład w prześladowaniu politycznym w tej chwili, tak samo ich rodzeństwo i również na odwrót pozostający członkowie rodziny w Turcji nie mogą wesprzeć odpowiednie rodziny migranckie w Polsce. Więc po prostu to się skutkuje takim kryzysem rodzinnym.